Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Conquering Information Chaos with Microsoft 365 and Harmony. Before we get started, here are a few important messages. During the webinar, you are welcome to submit questions via the chat window on your screen. We will try to answer the questions at the end of today's webinar. If we don't answer your question, don't worry, a Harmony person will answer you via email. As always, we will make a recording of this webcast available to you within a couple of days. You will get a link via email to the recorded webinar. I would like to introduce today's speaker, David Lavender, Harmony Chief Product Officer. David is an expert on information overload. His academic research has focused on the role of email in organizational information overload. He has served in senior roles for a host of enterprise software, mobile security, and networking companies. David is also an award-winning technology and business writer and public speaker, including many years as a contributor to Fast Company, CMS Wire, and other leading press outlets. David is an international scholar for the Society for the History of Technology. David, please.
Thanks, Maya. Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Conquering Information Chaos with Microsoft 365 and Harmony. We're going to be talking a lot about managing emails in this new hybrid workplace, information governance with the tools that you already have. Just to set the context, looking at a report that Gartner put out not too long ago, we've been talking about remote work for the last year. There probably hasn't been anything that has not been written about all the challenges of moving during the lockdown to working remote in a distributed workplace. But Gartner did point out something that was a little bit unusual. It hasn't been covered so much, and that's the idea that even though people are working remotely, the focus is usually around things like videos and meetings. But they looked at it and pointed out that as people sit at home, they're accumulating new types of data, relying on fragmented storage systems, which expose them to more regulatory, ethical, and data security risks. So what are we talking about? Just give you an example of one of our clients who we did a joint webinar a while back. The ESDC, the Employment and Social Development of Canada, the Canadian federal agency. During the lockdown, like most organizations, their people had to go work from home. They had about 30,000 people who went to work from home. And what they reported was email inboxes exploding. Why? Because people were trying to send themselves documents. As they left the office, they didn't have access to file shares, and they were trying to make sure that they had access to all the documents that they needed. So one of these fragmented storage systems is just simply email and attachments. It doesn't have to be another storage or another content management system. So this is one of the problems. Exploding email inboxes, lots of local storage. It's a nightmare for information governance and for compliance. And this is something that we're dealing with, even if you're just using Microsoft 365, if you don't have another content management system in place. And before we look at some other trends, maybe we'll just do a stop here and take a poll question about your own experience.
What grade would you give your organization in dealing with the rising tide of information chaos? Please select one. Excellent, good, average, needs improvement, or poor. We'll look at the results in a second. Here they are.
Okay, so we see here that 38% say we need improvement. So between needs improvement and poor is about half. And the other half, pretty much good and average. Nobody really feels they're doing an excellent job. And I think this pretty much is in line with industry numbers. That was just a kind of a level set to see where folks are. What I'd like to do is compare this to an AIM study. AIM, of course, as most of you know, is the Association for Intelligent Information Management trade organization that ran a survey earlier this year. And they found that organizations are losing the battle against information chaos. and they need to rethink manual approaches to information management. In their survey, they found that on average, most organizations gave themselves a C-. So I think pretty much where we are looking at needs improvement and poor, it's not all that different than the industry numbers is what we saw the people on the webinar experiencing, pretty much the same thing. Now, one of the directives that that AIM gives to in order to overcome this is to, what they say, be a hero with the tools that you already have, and not have to look outside and try and implement something different. And this is exactly what we found in line, again, with the webinar we did a while back with ESDC. The executive director of business solutions there said that their key to conquering information management was enabling employees to do information management without knowing that they're doing it. Making things simple, making the actual idea of classifying information, putting it in the right place, part of the overall ongoing business process without trying to introduce something new. Introducing something new is going to be dead in the water. People don't want to do anything new. They don't want to learn new things. And quite honestly, when people are now at home or working remotely in other places, it's just impossible and impractical to expect them to learn something new and start working differently to classify and put information in the right places. So a lot has been written about teams. A lot of people are talking about teams, that our workflows have changed, that now we're working through meetings. Microsoft has said that Teams has gone from 13 million users before the pandemic to about 250 million. That was a few months ago. So that's an enormous growth pattern. Everybody's pretty much using Teams, but for the most part, Teams is being used for meetings, a little bit using now for chat. Some of the newer features or more advanced features are coming into play, but for the most part, people are mostly still using it for meetings. And when they are using it for chat, it's mostly for internal use. If you have experience trying to work with outside parties like customers, suppliers, and partners, of course, there is guest access, and we know that there's connected channels that are coming later next year. But in general, the experience of trying to communicate externally with using Teams with customers, suppliers, and partners is really not the same level of communications that you get through email. Just a simple example, say you're working with a client and the client has sends you a contract, you make changes to the contract, you send it back. With email, every party has an accurate record of what transpired, even if the connection between the two companies or organizations is severed. Every organization, both sides, maintain accurate records of the entire what transpired, the transactions, the discussions, the communications. With Teams, it's not so straightforward. It's much more complicated when you have guests visiting your tenant. So for that reason, as well as the fact of just inertia and the way that people work, and people don't like to change what they're doing, external communications for the foreseeable future is going to remain in email. And what that means is that emails are really going to continue to be, some of them at least, are going to continue to be documents of record. Again, somebody sends you a proposal and asks you to fill it out. Somebody sends a contract, status reports. These are kind of things that are records, even though they may be just text in emails. There's really no difference between them and a document that might be contain the same type of information. So now we're really going to be challenged with working with two different applications for communication with other people, Outlook and Teams. And this is really going to continue for the foreseeable future. And this really introduces several challenges that we'll be examining how to overcome them in just a few moments. So really there's conquering information chaos has a lot to do with using multiple applications. You know, the dream of the future is that you're going to have one, Salesforce calls this the digital headquarters, that you're going to have one application where everything is going to be from that place, but we're not there yet, and it's probably going to take a lot longer than the vendors think it's going to take. Right now, we've got, even within Microsoft 365, if you have no other content management system, you have emails and documents that could be stored in Outlook, they could be stored in SharePoint, Teams, they could be in OneDrive, and trying to put the stuff into place and be able to find it later on is a massive challenge for conquering chaos, having information governance under control, and of course for compliance. So that's one challenge that we need to deal with, is how do you store the information in such a way that it can be found later on for legal purposes, for audits, even just for knowledge management purposes. The second challenge we have goes back to the problem of using Teams for internal communication and Outlook for an email for external communication. And that is, how do you get help from colleagues when you're working with clients? So you have one channel where the conversation is taking place in email with clients, and then internally you're collaborating with colleagues about emails that you've received from the outside. This two-app conundrum is something that is not going to go away soon, and it's something that really needs to be overcome if you want to take control and get control over the chaos of all the information that's flowing around here. And this is something that we're going to look at how to do this in the next few minutes. But before we do that, we're going to stop and take another poll, and I'll turn it back over to Maya.
Thank you, David. What percentage of your organization's emails need to be retained for record-keeping purposes, such as governance, compliance, or regulations? Please select one, none, 1 to 10%, 11 to 20%, 21 to 30%, or more than 30%. Okay, now let's see the results.
Okay, so looking at the results, we got, well, it's about a quarter say more than 30%, about a quarter say 20 to 30%. So we've got about half say that it's between over 20%, and half say it's below 20%, which is interesting numbers because we did an industry survey, a broad industry survey a number of years ago, and found that most organizations report something around the order of 5 to 10%. And I think we get these numbers because we're the kind of folks who spend a lot of time dealing with information governance and email management, and therefore probably more in the weeds in terms of dealing with the actual content. So it's just interesting from a conceptual perspective of how much content we think we need to deal with. But dealing with 20% of the emails that we need, it's to me to be maintained as records is a phenomenal high number, and it's just points to the urgency of solving this problem of organizing emails so that they can be found and used later. So in order to really discuss how this is done, let's just talk about briefly what kind of business emails we're talking about. So there's really three kinds of emails, and each one of them has to be treated slightly differently in order to organize and capture them in the way, or use them in the way that provides the most value for the end users while maintaining governance requirements and fulfilling compliance requirements. So the first kind of email is records. So these are things, again, I've mentioned this several times, things like contracts. Someone can send a contract just as a text of a message, or a proposal, or a request for a price quote, an invoice, many different kinds of emails that are records. And these are things that need to be maintained. So we saw, again, about half the people here say we would need to maintain over 20% of these. So that's a lot of emails. And what that means is they need to be captured into some sort of centralized location. You can't keep these locked in people's inboxes in PST files and then try and deal with it afterwards. First of all, just trying to ferret out the ones that are important from all the mess that's in there would be almost impossible. Secondly, trying to parse these files. People leave the organization. It's just impractical to expect to keep these in personal inboxes and be able to use them as records later on. So the first thing is they have to be captured into a centralized location. And in the world of Microsoft 365, that location has traditionally been SharePoint, or even now it perhaps could also include Teams. But traditionally this has been SharePoint. But it's not enough to just capture this information, because once the information is captured, it becomes, if you don't do anything with it, it just becomes a document or an email graveyard. trying to find something in there, something important, it becomes impossible. So classification is the way to go. And again, in the world of Microsoft 365, classification is metadata. So the question is, how do you practically ask end users to apply metadata, capture and then apply metadata without creating a new business process? And we're going to see how we do that. And of course, once you've captured and classified the information in a shared location and added the metadata, it'll be easy to find if you have the right tools to do that. And we'll see how you can do that across the different document repositories, again, whether it's SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive. So that's one kind of email. The second kind of email are tasks. So things like an awful lot of emails are task requests. Hey Bob, can you send me that document? Hey Karen, what's the status of what's going on with this particular project? Hey, can you call the customer and find out what's happening? Just sorts of requests and tasks. And these types of emails typically don't need to be saved over a long period of time, but they're important that you can share them with colleagues in a way that's very practical. So we had a client tell us a couple weeks ago that they had these types of emails very common in their organization, like I'm sure most of you have, and they were sent to a mailbox that a shared mailbox where 5 people received these emails. And just within a few days, the number of replies and share with all turned this into a email thread with over 5,000 individual email messages. And this is the kind of thing that mushrooms out of control. So we need is to some way conquering information chaos with these types of emails entails sharing it one time in a common place where everyone on the team who needs to see it can deal with it. And we're going to see how we do that as well. And then, of course, the third kind of email are those which makes up the majority of email, which is rot, redundant, outdated, and trivial emails. And those just need to find a way either to delete them or to ignore them. But to separate them out from the records and the tasks that it really need to use to run the business. So records, we're going to show you how to do this with Harmony 365, a new product that we've released. And it's actually the newest version of our Harmony Outlook plugin, and with some fantastic new features specifically designed for Microsoft 365 to capture, classify, and find documents across all the Microsoft 365 content repositories. The other product I'm going to show you is a new product we released this year called Email Teammate, which is a product that allows you to pull in client emails directly from team conversations and add them so that you can just pull them in to a conversation and then collaborate around that email. One email, conversation, everybody sees what's happening, but not having to create that ongoing email thread. So Harmony 365, we're going to take a look at this first. And really what it's all about is solving that 2-app conundrum of bringing everything into knowing where to spend your time in order to get the work done. If you're in email, making it easy to capture, classify emails and documents, literally just by dragging and dropping them into SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams, being able to discover them using new advanced tools, and being able to share them with colleagues as well in Harmony 365, but also in Teams. And that's really, if in the new world where you're working from home and have lots of meetings in Teams, lots of people are spending more times in Teams collaborating with colleagues. In that situation, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to pull information out of Outlook, out of email, directly into a Teams conversation without having to toggle between the two apps. And that's really what Harmony 365 is about, is to allow you to do the operations you need in the app that you're already located without having to introduce new infrastructure. You're working with the Microsoft 365 tools you've already invested in and you want your workers to use, and making information management, allowing them to do information management without knowing they're doing information management. So we're going to do a demo now, and we're going to shift over to my Outlook. So this should look familiar to everybody. This is my Outlook window, and you see the normal things you'd see here, the list of all the emails that are coming in, the email pane, and of course, what you see on the right side of the screen is the Harmony sidebar. This is the plugin that fits right in your Outlook window. And what you're seeing here is really a view into your content management repositories in Microsoft 365. So you see that you've got your SharePoint sites, and I can continue to drill down on this just as you would from the browser. I also have Teams, so I can, all the teams that I have connected to, I can deposit, drag and drop emails and documents directly to Teams channels, so that they'll appear in the files section of the Teams channels, and that's very helpful sometimes. And also the ability to add it to OneDrive, and I'll come back to OneDrive in a moment to show some unique capabilities that we've added here. Just two other things I want to show in the window here. One is recent. Recent is really helpful when oftentimes you work, most of the time, in fact, you work on something that you were working on yesterday. You're just continuing to work on the same documents and folders, and being able to see those and get to those quickly is really helpful. One of the other really nice things we've added here is favorites, so that you have the ability to put the locations that you work with frequently in a place where you don't have to constantly navigate to get there. You can just literally have it at the top of mind, so you can have access to those documents. And these, of course, are completely, it's a complete window into what you're working on, into your SharePoint or Teams or OneDrive repositories. You can drill down and get all the way down and look at things, at documents and emails. So you can double click on it to open it. These are, you can view, you can share, and do all the things that you can do in SharePoint. One of the great things, though, is this: we talked about what it takes to do email management and to get a grip on information chaos, is to be able to make it easy for end users to drag and to capture and classify information without having to learn something new. So let's go back to the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how easy it is. I get an email. Let's take a look at this email. So I get an email saying from my good friend Sam, and he tells me I'm in a professional services organization. Sam is my client. He's at Ravenwood Corp, and he's telling me that they're exploring a possible merger. And I get this information from Sam, and he sends me a document with the merger structure. This is obviously a record, because this is something that once I reply to this email, it's going to be something that I have to keep for legal purposes and have an accurate record of it. And what I can do is literally just take the email and drag it across into the folder where I'm working on this particular project. Now, what you see is what pops up right on the screen is I get a properties view, which is asking me to add more information. Now, we've added a lot of metadata here. A lot of it is default information, default values, so the users typically don't have to add a lot of information. But you can see we also make it easy. If they want to change the meeting location, you get a pop-up where you can just select from it. There's not a lot of data entry. You see that the fields that are signified by a red dot are required fields, and there's one that hasn't been filled out yet. So I'm just going to add a meeting ID and click on Save. Once I do that, the document asks me if I want to ask any version information, initial merger inquiry. And once I do that, this document is now, the email and the attachment are now included in SharePoint, and they're classified according to the metadata that was specified there. It's really that simple. There's nothing easier than asking people to drag and drop information as they bring it across. You can even see there's a message here that is retained in the email that says where it was saved in SharePoint. So you do have the option of copying the email from Outlook into SharePoint, or when you drag it across, having that email and attachment deleted from the inbox, so that it only resides in a shared location. That's part of the configuration and setup. So it's really that simple. And of course, now if you want to be able to use that information, I'm going to create a new email, and Harmony is a sidebar that resides in every window. So I can just open it here. And if I want to share that go back to that document, and I want to share that email that I just got with colleagues, literally I can just drag it over into the email, and what people get now is a link instead of an attachment. And now where everybody's working on the same version of that email or the document, there's no need, there's no version control. All the chaos associated with document versioning has been eliminated because everyone's working on the centralized copy of that document. So that's capture and classify. Once you've done that, of course, you need the ability to find information. Maybe just before I go to find, one of the things that is becoming increasingly important in being able to do is not only to capture and classify, but also to signify that something is a record. So what I can do with a record is I can just right click on it, and I can apply a retention label or a sensitivity label, and I can say I'm going to set it as a record. And once I do that, you can see that there's a little lock that appears in the corner. I've defined this as a record. No need to go to the browser. Everything is done in the Outlook window where people are spending their work time. Okay, so we've shown how to capture, classify, and define something as a record. Now, if we want to find something, of course, really important to be able to find it. Information can be spread across multiple locations in Microsoft 365. It could be in SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. So what we've done is we've introduced a really nice way to do search. Now, one of the problems you always know with search is that if you search in a very narrow scope, so I'm just searching in a folder, you're probably not going to find very much. And if you set your search scope too broad, you're going to find way too much stuff and you're not going to be able to find it. And we understand this, so we've introduced the ability to define the search context as well as the search, the content for search. So one of the things you'll see here is I can do search, but I also can search the current site or all locations. Let me go back to where I was. And I'm going to go back to this folder. And I'm going to search for the word management, and I didn't find anything. Well, but I'm only looking in the current folder, and usually if I'm looking in a narrow search context, I don't find very much. So let's broaden that a little bit. I'm just going to go up to the current site and see what I come up with. And now if I do that, I get a number of that's reasonable. But what happens if I go all the way to all the locations and I search for something? And now we're going to see that we're going to get that lots of results. We see here at the bottom, we've got 400 items. Wow, 400 items is a huge amount to pick through. I'm not going to be able to find what I'm looking for. But fear not, because we have some nice tools here to allow you to filter and view information. First of all, I know that this information is in SharePoint. I remember it's not in OneDrive or Teams, so I can just highlight those. I remember maybe that it's, and I can pick the filter on the site name, so maybe I know it's in construction and maybe construction projects. So I've narrowed that down, and I know that the document is also, it's a PowerPoint document that I'm looking for. So there you go. Just super easy to filter, to focus on what you need, to set the search scope, all within the window. Again, no need to go to another user interface, learn another user interface. It's all done right here in the same window. Now, one of the things it's also done is allow you to do search by search using metadata. So one of the things you'll see here is that we have search. Now, of course, with email, we automatically collect and the header information so that automatically becomes searchable and it becomes metadata. But we also have things like enterprise keywords. I don't remember, maybe I don't remember if management was an enterprise keyword, but let's give it a shot. And I can search by that. Oh, I actually found a few. So I can search by metadata and use those fields also as a way to narrow it down. And this makes it really easy because if I've defined my metadata properly and I made it super easy for people to populate the data the way it's supposed to be, finding things becomes really, really easy. Now, one last thing I want to show that we've added in Harmony 365 is the ability to not only capture, classify, and find information quickly, but also to be able to share it with colleagues. So if I right click, let's see, I'm gonna going to the location. I'm gonna go right to the location and find a document, and I wanna save this document with somebody. Let's share this document with somebody. I just click on share. And what we do is we now surface the Microsoft 365 ad hoc sharing capabilities so that if my organization allows me to do so, I can use that sharing capability to share this information with others. So I can either all the capabilities that Microsoft provides out of the box, sharing it with people with my organization, sharing anyone with the link, people with access, setting an expiration date, any of these kind of things I'm able to do. And what I can do now is I can share it with somebody. So I'm going to share it with my good friend Harmon Young, and I don't have a message for him, and I'm going to send it to him. He's received a link now, and he has access to that document, which out of the box, he may not have had access to that. Now, when people share these documents with me, it's very difficult to see this in one place afterwards. And so what we've done is we've added, going back to OneDrive, is a special view that we have in OneDrive that shows me all the documents that are shared with me through this mechanism. And I can see all this and who shared it with me and when it was shared. And again, all the filters that we showed before work directly from here without, so that I can find information quickly. So very quickly in the last few minutes, we've shown how you can capture, classify, find, and share information all across Microsoft 365, across the different content management systems and repositories, all within Outlook without having to lose focus, without having to change context. This is exactly the kind of thing that somebody sitting at home who doesn't really want to learn a new system and is just struggling to keep their head above water with getting the information they need, to be able to allow them to do this easily without having to learn something new and stay in the application where they're most comfortable and spend their workday. Now, the other thing I want to show quickly is also the ability to not only to push information from Outlook into the content repositories, but as we said, there's also a need when people are working at home and they're using Teams to collaborate with colleagues. Sometimes you may get an email from a client, and you want to pull that information, that email, into a conversation so that everybody can have one copy of that email and everybody can collaborate around that email in a very transparent way where you don't have to go through endless email threads to find out what's happening. So for example, I'm going to show an example of an email that I've already included, and then I'll show you how you do it. But you see that this Ravenwood merger, instead of dragging and dropping it into SharePoint, I'm in Teams, and now I've included it in a conversation. And attached to that, once I've included that, I have a list of all the back and forth conversations you have here. So we received that merger request, and I said we need some help from the team. I had legal, I had some questions that were related to tax liabilities, and different people weighed in, and we were able to collaborate on this before giving an answer to a customer. So let's just show you how you do this, make it very simple. So I can start a new conversation here, and I'm going to include an email that I got from a client. So I click on the Email Teammate app. This is an app that's a plugin to Teams. You install it from the app source, and I can just go to a folder. This is looking at my folder, and I can just take, say, this email and share it with the team. And once I do that, it will be included. You'll see it here. It's included in the team. Everybody sees this email, and people can weigh in, and I can just make a comment about it. And that's it. Now it's shared with everybody, and everybody can weigh in and respond to this as well. So able to bring the information, emails into Teams where people spend their work time. This is Email Teammate. You can download a free version of this from the, as I said, from the Microsoft App Source. We have an extended version of this, which will be coming out early next year, which takes this concept further and not only allows you to share an email in a conversation, but also to create tasks and assign tasks and to track tasks, so that if you're dealing with clients, it's a perfect application to be able to follow up on making sure that customer requests that are coming in have been handled properly and to have an accurate record of all the what has transpired internally and externally. Okay, so just going back to here. And okay, just maybe a word. I've been alluding to this case study throughout the presentation, but it's one that we documented not too long ago, and recently did a webinar together with the Executive Director of Business Solutions and Information Management at ESDC, together with our one of our great partners, Orangutech in Canada. And this this case was just exactly what we're talking about. You know, people went during pandemic, went to lockdown. Teams was rolled out very quickly. 30,000 people started using Teams. It was up and running in 3 months. Information became very hard to find. People lost access to their file shares. Inboxes exploded with attachments as people tried to capture all the information they needed. And moving to Microsoft 365 provided the infrastructure, and Harmony provided the user experience that enabled the people working at ESDC to capture, classify, and be able to find information, thereby getting a handle on information management and fulfilling the requirements for information governance and compliance. Again, the key to all this, in the words of the Executive Director of Business Solutions, was that Harmony enabled employees to do information management without knowing they're doing information management, and that makes all the difference. Very much in line with what AIM is talking about, and that is reducing the number of manual tasks in order to do information management, particularly as the repositories become more fragmented and information starts to spread out as people are spending more and more time away from the office. With that, I'd like to offer as a final takeaway, if you are a Harmony customer, you can download the newest version of the Harmony 365 product from this link on the left. You go to the customer portal download area. If you want to get the email teammate, you can get that from the app source. If you're a Harmony customer, that's included, as well as 2 other apps that I didn't show that are Office and Outlook web apps. These are these are web app versions of the Harmony product, also included with the Harmony 365 license. If you go to the download area, there are links to download all that to get to the right locations to install and download those products. If you are not yet a customer and you'd like a 30-day free trial, enterprise trial, there's either a QR code here or a short link that you can click on and go to the site and register and try it out for yourself. And we welcome you to do that. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Maya and answer any questions that we may have that have come in during the session.
Thank you, David. Here's the first question for you. When sharing items in a library, does it also provide the user with permissions, or does the user need to have permissions set up in order for them to actually see the document?
Excellent question. So anything that you do in Harmony, there's no permissions that need to be set up in Harmony, or any configurations. When you're looking at information through the sidebar, all the information that you see is what you're allowed to see with your Microsoft 365 access control settings. So what we're doing is we're actually accessing the information using your own credentials. There's no level on top of that in terms of who you can share information or who you can see information. Everything is being read directly from the corporate policies already set up in Microsoft 365.
Thanks, David. Does Harmony 365 work with SharePoint on premises?
Yes, it does. We still have many customers who have at least a component of the SharePoint infrastructure on premise. Of course, the advanced features, some of the advanced features I showed, like ad hoc sharing, that are only available in Microsoft 365, will only be available if you have that. They will not be available if you're accessing SharePoint on premises using the Harmony sidebar, but it absolutely works and will continue to work, and we've got lots of customers who are using that today.
Thanks. Another question we have is how do I get Email Teammate?
So Email Teammate can be installed through the Microsoft App Source. So if you go to the App Source and do a search for Email Teammate, or you come to the Harmony website, you can also find a link to that to get it. There is a free version that allows you to do a limited number of operations before you need to upgrade to a paying version, but it is available from the App Source.
And we have time for one last question. How can I use Harmony if I'm working with Mac?
So that's a question that comes up quite often. If you're using a Mac, what you'd want to do is use our web app versions of the product. Again, these are also available either from the Harmony website. There'll be links to get to those on the Microsoft App Source. But these are web app versions of the product that allow you to work through a web interface. They're not as full featured as the desktop version, but they allow you to do the core features like capture, classify, share, find. So it has all the core features, and we have a lot of customers who are using those products. Those are installable again from the App Source or from the Harmony website.
Thank you, David, for a great presentation, and thank all of you for joining us today. You will receive an email with the link to view this webinar again within a couple of days, and we look forward to meeting you again at our next webinar. Bye-bye.